with host Kevin Evans. To continue the conversation, head over to codetocloud.io.
Hey, and welcome to the Code to Cloud podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Evans, and today I am joined by Marino Wijay. Did I say that right, Marino?
Hey, you got it right.
Result. Right. Marino, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I'm always thankful for when folks reach out and say, hey, can you be on my podcast? Because it's a good feeling, right? People want to hear about what I've done and whatnot. Anyways, my name is Marino Wijay, as Kevin introduced me. I am a cloud native architect of sorts, but I lead with community first. To me, the community has been the forefront of what I've been doing for the last 3-4 years. And before that, I've spent a lot of time in tech. I've been here for over 2 decades, doing a variety of different activities, being in different roles. But I've specialized in network technologies. And, one thing that networking does is it connects things, but also networking, the other side to it is it connects people. It introduces you to people. It gets you in front of the right people that will help you along your journey and then simultaneously help them along their journey. So it's a little bit about me. We can definitely get into, more of it. I am also Canadian, by the way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to do an episode on community, right? Especially in our field. I met you a few years back. I just landed in Canada, right? I think it was 2 years ago now, and something popped up on my LinkedIn, and it was this Cube Huddle event, and I think I was flying out to see customers at the time. I was like, I'm going to give that a go, right? So I bought my ticket, and I turned up to the convention center, right? Downtown Toronto.
Metro
Never
Toronto
been
Convention
before.
Center.
Yeah. And there you were, right? Running around like a headless chicken, right? Trying to get everything together. And I met all these amazing people. And it was a great way for me to start learning about some of the cloud native community that we have here in Canada. But even the topics, right? But you had people from all over the place, right? Speaking. So do you just want to talk about how you got the idea for Cube Huddle and what the main objective was for you to get it off the ground?
Absolutely. So a long time ago, I had this idea that I wanted to run some sort of conference, some networking focused conference. I wasn't really sure how I would execute it. And I was really thinking about it. I consulted a number of folks, and I had some feedback around how it shouldn't be network centric. You'd have to think about a variety of different factors and points of view to be able to do something like that. And at the same time, I was traveling around doing other conferences, visiting them, speaking at them, like DevOps Days and others like KubeCon. And there was one particular one that stood out, run by David Flanagan, aka Raw Code. And he was the one that actually ran the very first Cube Huddle that was out in Edinburgh, Scotland. So I'd submitted a CFP to that conference and it got accepted, went out there, and I loved the vibe. And after the event, I reached out to David and I'm like, hey, I really liked your event. How would you like to scale this? Would you be okay if we brought this to Toronto? And he was totally on board with it, right? He even came on board to help out and provide a lot of guidance and be advisory to a lot of the different activities we do, shared how he went about constructing his budget, planned it out, who we reached out to for sponsors. And that just gave me the motivation to really kick this off. So late 2022, probably around the December timeframe, I went out to the MTCC and a few other venues. And I love the MTCC. I've been there for other conferences too. If you've ever been to an AWS Summit or some of the other events out there, like maybe even the Auto Show, they have been at the MTCC, and it was the perfect place to run this event. I had this really grandiose idea of okay, I'm going to have different sessions or different tracks and workshops and people can mingle, people can go attend whatever they wanted to. And, it was a fantastic event. For a very first event that we had in May 2023, it's a 2-day event. We had about 170 folks show up. We had a number of speakers, probably close to about maybe 40, 45 speakers across like lightning talks, across full talks, even delivering workshops. And it was just a great time. I had people from F5, like if you know Boo Lamb, Boo was walking around, taking a lot of videos, interviewing people. Like he's really good at that stuff. And I love that. I love that it felt very much like a community-oriented conference. Yes, it was expensive to run because the MTCC itself as a venue is expensive, from like just booking out rooms. And then on top of that, you've got to deal with the food. And they didn't allow outside catering at the time. I don't think they do still, but that's fine. And it just made me realize, like, okay, if I wanted to make this conference successful, I also have to find the right balance of sponsorships and ticket costs as well. Because any conference you go out to, you're not going to find a conference that's free. I mean, you will, there are some out there, but most of the time free is a point of view, and you might be giving up a lot of your like information for that attendance, right? But at the same time, I found a good balance. I charged somewhere around 200-ish per ticket. And, it enticed folks to come by. They found value out of the conference. Kevin, you came out, you got to meet a bunch of folks. You got to meet me in person. Like that was the first time we ever got to meet.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is through that, a lot of other people were inspired to either go run their own conferences or even be a part of like organizing teams. So it was that one central junction for folks to really go figure out their next thing. And we did another one. We did another one last year in May as well. It was a 1-day event. I decided to scale down a bit because I really wanted to find the right balance of making sure folks could get the time off. And then we could also entice more local folks to come by too, because the last event, we had a lot of folks that flew in. When you think about like trying to offset like your carbon footprint a little bit or reduce that footprint, having people fly all over from different parts of the world, while nice and fun, isn't, healthy for our planet. So I really wanted to be a lot more focused this last one. We had a lot of folks show up. We actually had 230 people show up for the second one. And I was shocked. We didn't do it at the MTCC. We did it at the Toronto Reference Library, which actually is a heritage icon for Toronto and a lot of parts of Ontario. It's one of the largest libraries out there. And, when we were looking for a venue, I was thinking about universities. I was thinking about other like shared spaces. But something about the Toronto Reference Library just made sense. And you wouldn't think that you could run an event there, but they actually had the space to do it. They had a little room sectioned off. It wasn't little, it was actually big. And they even had enough space for another room to run workshops. So it was the ideal spot. And, we just recently uploaded the videos for that event. So if you want to go take a look at the Coop Huddle YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of the videos from that event up there. Now, having said that, conferences are fantastic. Like they're great for folks to be able to connect and meet up. And that's what inspired me to do it initially. Granted, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of strategy. Yeah. So, as much as I enjoyed it, it's hard for me to think about another one right now.
Yeah, it's something I can relate to, right? It's something that we're trying to build out here in the West with Code to Cloud Days. It's so far from like our skill set as well, right? If we're technical folks, and then all of a sudden we're events people, marketers, right? Caterers, right? Whatever you want to call it. And it's, trying to bring all this stuff together is eye-opening, right? You've got to build a successful team around you and everything else. But what I'm trying to advocate here with these kind of events, and this is not going to be a 45-minute session about me and Marino telling everybody how great our events are, but it's why we do it, right? Why it's important. So, the question is, what makes a great tech community from your point of view?
From my point of view, it has a lot to do with the collective minds, right? It's not just about me. It's not just about you. It's about everyone else that's in the room and how they contribute. Something I found really early on when I started attending the CNCF Toronto meetups was the type of people that showed up. You'd have a blend of folks that were either students or they were, well into their careers, professionals that were deep into their careers. And then you had folks that, had never touched tech before. So they're even new to the industry altogether. And, it feels very much like a safe place where you can come together, chat about things, present on something like of a technology or a challenge that you solved in your organization. And you begin to realize that that safe space is meant for everyone, but it's only possible because of the people that run it, that organize it, that set the guidelines to ensure that it is a safe place. But it's also an inspirational place. When you think about that community for a second, any one of these communities, you come in there and you're not only there to learn, but you're there to meet someone, meet your next friend, your next job opportunity, if you will, your next career move. Maybe you get to meet someone that you get to collaborate with on a project long term. Maybe that's your co-founder somewhere there, right? And I've seen that happen before where if you can bring people together in a room, right, they may not all talk to each other. It might not be an end-to-end relationship. But what you will find is some people will resonate with others around their talk, or they'll resonate about some sort of ideas and they'll gravitate towards them and they'll start having deeper conversations. And then you start to see, down the line, oh, these people are now doing a stream together, a series of streams together, right? And they're sharing ideas. And it's not something you would ever expect, but it just happens because of something like a community, like a meetup. And the conferences are very much the same. Now, when you think about community for a second, right, it's an embodiment of people who share ideas, who feel the same way about a certain set of technologies or the way they do things at their place of work. And they come there to be able to be inspired to solve other problems as well. And to me, that's really what that community is really about. It's for folks to really advance themselves, level up, think about their next thing. Because here's the other thing too, like no one has infinite amounts of time to go sit and learn a course, especially when they have a full-time job. But when you come to a meetup, you actually get that as a very subtle artifact or subtle feeling, because you're there to learn, but that's not your primary intention. You're there to connect with people. And that connection just takes you so much further, right? There's this saying where if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And that's what community is really about. You're going far together.
Some wise words right there. I remember being at Cube Huddle, and I think I was the only Microsoft guy there, which had its own set of attention, right? I was getting asked questions in the audience because people were asking Azure questions, but not only that, I met some incredible people from all different walks of life, right? It was like a central point, and I learned so much because it was out of the normal scope of what I'd normally be doing. But to your point, with collaboration, long-term collaboration, there's obviously like the likes of me and you, right? The way we've built up collaboration over the years. But I remember when the CNCF turned up at your event, and so for folks that wonder who the CNCF are, it's the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, right? And it was Archie, right? He came out on stage. He had that amazing suit. Do you remember that suit he was wearing?
The cloud suit, the cloud power suit.
I was blown away, right, with this suit. Just try and Google it, right? And he came up and he was explaining who they were in Canada, right, for our region. And he brought up this map of Canada, and it showed us all the chapters, right? And I put my hand up because there was none in the West. He was like, "Yeah, we haven't got anybody out there." I was like, "I'll do it. I'll do one for Alberta, right? Which is a province here in Canada, right?" And I mean, the rest is history. I got in touch with Archie, put me in touch with the CNCF, started building this meetup, right, in Calgary, and it was the first of its kind in the West at that time anyway. And again, it sort of replicated what you were trying to do. People were turning up, right, similar audiences, and I was just blown away because it was bringing people together, but like they were learning stuff as well, but meeting each other, right? It was a way of connecting with my local community, right, through that vessel. So that's what I mean. Like, you don't know what's going to happen when you turn up to these events, right? That's what I love about it, and the different people that you're going to meet.
I agree.
But yeah, Archie's suit is the key takeaway, right? I need to find a picture.
I think we have some hanging around in the archives. I'll find one for you.
I'll put it in the show notes. It's he's definitely Mr. Cloud Native. So yeah, that's great. But I mean, you've done multiple things as well, right? You're building a tech community online as well. You know, some folks can't attend in person, right? Maybe they're on the shift, right? Whatever it may be. Like I speak to people that are outside of tech, right? Trying to break in, right? And they're doing the long shift, right? Like I've been speaking to somebody recently, and they're a warehouse worker, right? And they're like, how do I even get involved, right? With the time that I've got available. So when it comes to online community, how can people sort of get engaged? I mean, we used to do a lot on X, right? Twitter. But, you know, we talk about Slack, Discord, or GitHub and LinkedIn. Like, where would you start when it comes to online community engagement?
You know, I was thinking about this the other day as well. You know, or Twitter was a great place to really begin it all. It's in like the whole mindset and ideology behind X and Twitter today is completely different from when I first started, because it became such a monetized platform. But anyways, that's a separate conversation altogether. You know, what I find value in is if you can find a place where it's easily accessible. Right. Slack is a good place, but it can get expensive if you decide you want to go full on enterprise. But Discord's been an amazing place. So Kat Morgan, I think you might have, yeah, exactly.
I've had Kat on the show before, right?
Yeah,
amazing engineer.
Fantastic engineer, but she put together her own little community called Container Craft. And she wanted it to be a very builder-centric community where you don't have to be a builder off the start, but you have to come with the mindset that you're going to build, that you want to participate in that building. You want to contribute somehow. And it's both formal and informal in that the Discord server she built out is extremely inviting to folks that want to come in and maybe build out their home lab from scratch, right? I want to build out a Kubernetes home lab. Well, here's how you do it. But she takes it a step further and she decides, you know, I want to build something that becomes sustainable and usable across the enterprise as well, where they have the option of going completely open source, but they also can decide, hey, I'm going to take an enterprise route and get support contracts. The nice thing about that channel, though, is you actually will find a wide audience of people, folks that are very new to infrastructure but have a very strong development background. You'll find founders and CTOs in that channel too that are building alongside of us. Then you'll find people like me that just like come around and troll half the time and then disappear. Because like, I'll be honest, I do a lot in so many different areas that I don't have time to sit there and build like she does. And she has so much more patience than I do to just sit there, commit like several hours of her time to building out something amazing. And that's an example of a community where you're not ever like obligated to be there and be on all the time. You come when you can and you show up and add your piece, as long as it's not offensive, it doesn't hurt anyone or harmful, but it's something that benefits, you know, some or all. Then add your piece and then move along and then come back maybe a week later. That's how I am, right? Like I'll spend maybe a couple of days in there, disappear for like 3 weeks and then show up again. And like there's this whole whack of messages that I completely missed. I don't have any context around what's going on. but you don't feel like you're behind, right? Everyone's at different parts of their home lab journey or their infrastructure journey. But she also finds this really very compelling way to get people to just, feel like they can contribute to in their own way, right? And she started off working on like Pulumi and building with Pulumi, building infrastructure and building a control plane for infrastructure via Pulumi. And that inspired some others, right? You'll find that there's others like Cadence who comes in and she's also building her own little thing using Pulumi, but she takes the lens of using a language that not a lot of people know of, F sharp. And it's actually interesting because I know C sharp, I know Python, but F sharp's a very unique, but also not so heavily talked about language that's also very powerful. And she's been doing it for a long time that she decided, let me give my perspective on how I would build infrastructure. So you get these different perspectives as well. But to answer your question, right, it's a very easygoing community where you have Discord, you come in when you can, you show up and add your piece. And when you're not available, you're not available. Like, it is what it is. There's no expectations. And that's what a community should be about. There are zero expectations to always be on. But if you can come along for the ride when you're available, absolutely. You're welcome.
No, I love that. Like, I mean, before the pandemic, it was very much an in-person thing, right? And then I saw a lot of shift to online communities, right? And I mean, there's got to be thousands of them at this point, right? So it's finding the one that's aligned to your, let's say, tech stack or where you want to be. But like, yeah, Cat's a great example because I remember watching Cat in action and just going, I didn't know you could do that, right? Kind of thing, right? Like engineering practices or whatever it may be. And sometimes that's inspiring as well, because then, you don't know what you don't know, right? At the end of the day. And that's what I kind of like about community events as well, is you're exposed to things that you might not necessarily, engage with in your day to day, right? So yeah, I love that. If we talk about collaboration, let's look at it from the lens of people early on in careers, right, or mid career. One of the better things I've seen from community events is people been able to find their mentors or basically a study buddy, right, whatever you want to call it, right, for that next certification. Where have you seen that work really well? And also to the point where it's another reason why people should try and attend these events or these communities.
So when I was talking about Kubhuddle earlier, I mentioned that folks came by and then they felt inspired to go out and do their own thing. You might have heard of Julia First Morgado. She works for Cass and Veeam. She's a developer advocate there, and through some of what she's done, all that activity, and the fact that she came out to Kubhuddle, was an organizer and supported that first event in so many different ways. Fantastic for what she did. Like I'm very thankful for all of her contributions. She decided to collaborate with others to form KCD New York. So KCD New York ran its first event last year, and they're running another event this year. That's a form of collaboration where she's taken some of the ideas, she's been inspired, and she's collaborating with folks local to her region in New York to go out and build a conference for folks there, right? And that's a strong form of collaboration because it takes a lot, right? You have to find alignment with people. They have to see what you're seeing as well. And, to get to that point of, okay, now we are actually here for day one of this event, there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that we don't get to see. A lot of collaboration we don't really get to hear about because it takes a lot, right? It takes a lot of give and take. There's a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of balancing going on here when it comes to collaboration. Everyone's at different parts of their lives, right? So Julia is a perfect example of someone that has jumped into community. She's part of like the AWS Community Builders Program. She's part of the CNCF and some other areas too. But she takes that and then she finds people she wants to connect with and then collaborate with. So she works with Ahmed and Scott Rigby, and they work together, the three of them. I think there's some others too. Forgetting some names, Cedric as well, from Red Hat. They work together to build up KCD New York, right? And that's a strong form of collaboration where they've all got their responsibilities to make it happen.
Hi, listeners. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Code to Cloud community. Your support and enthusiasm fuel our mission to bring you the best insights and conversations around cloud-native technologies. If you've enjoyed the podcast and would like to help us keep it going, you can support us through Patreon. Every contribution, big or small, helps us cover production costs and continue delivering valuable content to our listeners. We're incredibly grateful for your support, whether it's through Patreon, sharing the podcast with your network, or just being a loyal listener.
But then there are other things that go on too. Through some of my work, through some of the stuff that I've done over the past couple of years, I began collaborating with Ned Bellavance.
Oh, right. Yeah, we had Ned on the show, right? Yeah, Ned's a great guy. The Terraform guy, right?
Ned's a Terraform, yeah. And he's very talented, and he's got his own community too that he's built up for a long time. And there was like one day I just kind of put out something on LinkedIn and I'm like, hey, I want to start investigating these areas. And he piped up and he's like, do you want to stream together? And here we are. We just completed our first episode of live stream on Main last week. And we're doing our second episode tomorrow where we're digging into things like AI and the agentic stuff, as well as going back to Python, because I feel like I've kind of been incomplete with my Python journey. Like I started it, I kind of dabbled here and there, got distracted with other things. And then I realized, you know what, it's time to put it to good use. And so we're pairing that with Bedrock to understand a little bit more. We're using a little bit of, maybe some of that Azure AI too in the mix where we can. Obviously, we're using a little bit of that, GitHub magic and some of that VS Code and even Copilot to a degree. So yeah, there's a lot of love going to Microsoft too. Don't worry, Kevin.
Don't worry about it, man.
But the reality is, through those interactions, it turns into a collaboration of sorts. It's just an idea that comes about, and someone has to come along and say, "I want to be a part of this. Do you? Do you want to come along for this journey?" And it honestly does take a little bit of negotiation and planning, and to get around any sort of friction that potentially could arise. I don't see friction with a lot of people that I work with. In fact, I work well with a lot of people, and I have been very successful doing very collaborative projects over the last several years. But it comes back to that give and take, right? Like there are things that you have to give up in order to make sure that you can move forward as well. So collaboration can come in so many different forms. Like when I was doing Twitter Spaces for a long time, it's gotten a little buggy now, so I kind of stay away from it. But when I was doing Twitter Spaces, I found the best collaborators through Twitter Spaces. A collaboration can come in the form of a talk that you deliver on stage at a KubeCon. And I've done that a number of times too. Like I was lucky enough to deliver talks with people that I've worked with. I delivered a talk at Platform Engineering Day very recently with Adriana Vieira. And it was a fantastic talk about, how organizations adopt policy as code. And these collaborations only occur when people can see you in public, see you operate in public, see you learning in public, see you communicate with other communities. By the way, I don't have my own community. I've realized that it's better to be a part of many communities, or as many as you can, and become that recurring character, because then you become like this network of sorts, right? Where you're attached to so many different areas. I recently attended a conference called Commit Your Code, happened in Dallas, Texas, back in early December. And I met so many amazing people there that I'm collaborating with for another event. So it's an ongoing thing where if you can continue to put yourself out there and be willing to work with people, right? Be willing to collaborate in the way of, hey, we want to do something together. I cannot do it alone. Do you want to work with me? Offer that up to people. That's how I see collaboration working, right? Being willing to offer up that opportunity to someone else who maybe is scared. Maybe they're scared to even pipe up and say, hey, I want to do this thing with you. But they probably want to. They just won't say it until you actually say something. So I feel like collaboration is a very powerful tool in your career journey.
I love that. It's like drift, right? You're drifting from one community to another, right? And meeting all these wonderful and amazing people, right? Again, it's unintentional exposure, right, to those scenarios. You know, I think you touched on something there, right, about confidence as well. I know a lot of people, especially in their tech careers, are like, I want to get better at public speaking, or I want to be my presentation skills. Like they see events or community engagement as a way to improve their soft skills, right? Which is so important in your tech career, right? It's great being amazing at the command line, but those soft skills are really important. What advice would you give to people that are looking to sort of even just put their head up, right, and go, or raise their hand and go, hey, I'd like to talk at an event, but it's my first time? Because the first time you do it, it's so nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah, it is. When I started, I was presenting to customers a long time ago, and that was practice for me. As funny as that sounds, you shouldn't be practicing in front of customers, but guess what? Everyone does it. Everyone in tech does it.
Ditto.
Now, as an extension of that, though, public speaking is an art form that you can continually develop and get better at. And the way I did it was by using Twitter Spaces, right? I did one a very long time ago. Danny Thompson piped up and said, hey, I want to run a Twitter Space, and I'm looking for someone that can talk about cloud. Like, I know cloud. I'm not like, you, Kevin, you are very much expert in cloud, but I knew enough that for his audience, I could definitely convey a lot of valuable information. So I put my hand up, and, he brought me on stage when we did the space, and that was what inspired me to continue to do more. So I did more and more spaces on my own. I hosted my very first one where we talked about solution architecture and solution engineering and understanding where those roles fit in an organization. And it just spun out, and I just started doing many, many, many more spaces. But that practice really helps you engage, right? How you communicate, how you want to convey ideas to people that are listening, which then translates to being able to do this on stage as well, because you become comfortable when you can do this on stage. So for folks that are really trying to get into it, I also thought about live streaming. I started doing a lot of live streaming back in 2022, and it helped, like being in front of a camera. It helped being in front of an audience that I don't know what they're thinking. Like, they could be making all of these weird faces at me and I wouldn't know. They could be, talking smack behind the camera when I'm not, like, I wouldn't have a clue. But that's okay. Like, I was fine with that, because at the same time, I never really saw negative comments come my way. But I know people get it, right? And it's not because of the way they speak. It's not because of the way they deliver things. Some people are just, maybe they're envious of the fact that, they're not able to get in front of camera or in front of the camera. But that really helped me a lot, right? The other thing too is the meetups. So when you go to a meetup, especially for CNCF Toronto, when we run meetups, we always ask the audience, if you have a great talk, or if you have a talk that you want to talk about, you have an idea, technology, you want to do a demo, come talk to us. Let us know, and we'll feed you the CFP form. And what's interesting? We haven't rejected a single person ever. We always accept people. Granted, we have a limited time at our meetups to have talks, and we try not to do more than 5 or 6 talks per session, because it kind of gets a little bit deep at times, or it can take away from the networking opportunities. So we try to shoot for like 15 to 20 minute talks where we can, and we get a really good number of speakers come up. We get first time speakers, folks that have never presented in their life. And we also get really seasoned speakers, folks that have been doing this for their entire career. We get the in-betweens as well. And that's honestly the best place to do it. You come to a meetup, and we try our best to record as many of these meetups as we can. If we can't, then at least we'll take as many pictures as we can and throw them up on the website. But when you come to a meetup and you deliver a talk there, your audience probably has no clue no idea, limited experience in the subject or topic you're about to talk about. So you're the expert, right? You get to be the expert on stage for however, how much time you have. And that's where you're going to kickstart it off, right? That's where you're going to get your jump start to come up on stage, talk a little bit about something, and then you use that to get your next talk. Because this is what I did, right? I started doing a lot more meetups first initially, speaking at them, and that really helped propel me and got me on stage at other events, at DevOps Days, at Cloud Native Security Con, at KubeCon even, and some of the Colo events too, and some other events like KCDs. So I say this because as you begin to do this, you are now building yourself a public profile, a public presence. You're now building a portfolio where people simply will go on YouTube, search up your name, they can find a bunch of videos of recordings of your talks. And so now it becomes very easy for people to realize, hey, I want that person to come speak at my event. I'm going to actually personally invite them out there because I really want to see them on stage. Or when you think about your next job or whatever, you put your YouTube channel or whatever it is on your resume, and now folks get to see you visually, like they get to see how you present, especially when you're going after these executive style roles, or you're going into a marketing role or even a developer advocacy role. Having that portfolio is so important, especially now, right? When you are much more known as a person that can get in front of the camera and convey ideas, folks gravitate towards you. I am telling you, folks gravitate towards you.
I had a really great mentor, and he said people should know who you are before you walk in the room when you're applying for a role. Right?
Oh yeah.
And he was right. Just gonna put that out there.
I will tell you, right? Last year was a very interesting year at the start of the year. I won't get into the specifics, but you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're saying, man.
And that what you just said was really important, because when I was looking for my next opportunity, people knew me. People knew me before I even walked into the room. Like when I walked into every single one of those Commodore interviews, I'd spend a little time at Commodore. They already knew me. Like whatever I was telling them, they like had this already in their mind. So it was just more of a formality to have that interview. And that becomes so important because even when I went to Kong, or now that I'm at Kong, every interview that I had, people knew my profile. They already had a good idea of what I can do, the kind of, services I bring and capabilities that I bring and skill sets as well. And if you can do that for yourself, you've just probably put yourself further ahead against the person that doesn't have a public profile.
Yeah, 100%. I actually use it as a vessel to push myself to learn something when I'm gonna do a talk. Like, I mean, it's not for everybody, but we'll plan a session or a meetup, and it's 3-4 weeks away, and it'll be like, we're gonna talk about this, and they'll be like, who have you got for that? Oh, I'm just gonna learn it, and then I'm gonna go and talk about it. And it puts pressure on me to go and learn it, right? Sometimes, because it depends on what motivates you, right? So I tend to use it in that catalyst. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. It's a great way to scale your network, right? So I'm just conscious of time, but we're gonna have a quick fire round. It's a bit of a fun part of the show, right? That I literally, you're gonna be the first person that I'm gonna ask those questions to, right? But you're gonna love it, right? But what are your top 3 skills that people should probably focus on for 2025?
Learn how to architect. That's one. The second one is learn how to take notes very well. And then the third one is pick a programming language, whatever it is, and go learn it. Those 3 things will take you really far.
Love it. Interesting. They're different from what people have suggested previously. I love that. That's great. Yeah, that's some great advice. Curious, what do you use to take notes?
So if I was on Windows, it'd be Notepad. Now that I am on a Mac, I just use there's a little Mac app there. It's called Notes. And honestly, it's the best app that I because of the Apple ecosystem that I use. Like, you store your notes here, and then you can access them anywhere. Another thing that I actually do too is sometimes I'll type myself an email.
Yeah.
And if I have like a bunch of notes, I'll send it to myself, and then I have it somewhere on record that I can go back and review it. So that's another way I take notes. And then the very last way I'll do is I've got a notebook over here, blank pages, like it's pure blank, no lines or anything like that. And I'll just start writing my notes there, because sometimes writing really helps.
Yeah, I use Notes. Again, I think we're Apple fanboys, right? We'll probably get some heat for this. But I got the iPad, and I've got the Apple Pencil, right, as well on there, and I can write notes on there. But do you know what? If it's like if it's technical notes, I'll use like an application or whatever, right? But I've gone back to handwriting notes a little bit, right? Just because then it translates through my brain into a physical action, and I seem to
your retention's
remember
a lot better.
Yeah, exactly, right? My callback is I need to do that, or actually I need to go and look at this topic, right? So yeah, that's something I've been getting into, and journaling as well, right? Like that's more of a self-help kind of thing, right? Like bit of positive mental energy there. But yeah, so I just want to finish off with a quick fire round. I think I already know the answers to some of these questions from what you said, right? But I thought it'd be food for thought, because I think it helps the audience understand the character or the person that you are, right? So question 1. What's your favorite operating system?
Ooh. That's hard, because I switch between so many.
And it could be past or present.
You know what? Windows XP. I'm not gonna lie to you. That was when it was like good. It was good. Like, it just had everything you needed. You didn't have problems. Yeah, you had a little problem here and there, but it was a solid operating system. And I think probably its next best was probably Windows 10, because anything in between or anything before or after is just.
I love that. I mean, what's your first memory when you think of Windows XP?
Oh, definitely the landscape of that photo, like where I think the cloud wisps and you've got like the greenery and all that stuff like that. I don't know why. And the start button, like the start button's like right there. You can see it. It's just so vibrant.
You know that wallpaper?
Yep.
I swear, like, somebody can fact check, but it was a dude on a highway in California, and he pulled over to the side of the road and took a picture, and he got like royalties. I think it was a low dollar amount, but obviously, it doesn't even matter, right? So like, I think it was like every time someone installed Windows, right, Windows XP, he got like $1 from it, right, or whatever for the background image. So it's probably one of the most seen images in the world, right? I saw that somewhere. Is that background? But yeah, yeah. So, okay, second one. What's your favorite computer of all time, past or present?
So I have two. I really love my MacBook Air right now. It's just such a fantastic device. Like, oh my gosh, it's just the perfect blend of portability, power, get your stuff done, screen size. I've got the 12-inch or 13-inch, I can't remember. But I had something else before, which I still have in my basement as a home lab system. So I had a Dell XPS, and it was one that I like magically got a really good deal on when I worked at Dell. So they had a really good discount when you were an employee. And at the time, they were somehow, there must have been like a system error. I got this system for like $600, and it was a pretty top of the line system at the time. It was slim. It had this capability where you could actually pop out the screen and it actually turn around the other way. And I was like kind of shocked because there weren't that many that could do something like it. So it could turn into a tablet if you wanted it to, but it was so portable. I could do everything I wanted on it. And, now that I think about it, if it was a little bit more powered, I'd probably be using it as a partially daily driver for certain activities. But I'm like surrounded by, I don't know, 1, 2, there's one behind me, there's an iPad in front of me. I've got a lot of systems. And then if you go to the basement, I've got my home lab. So.
Okay. Are you into video games?
Absolutely.
Right. Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
PlayStation or Xbox?
PlayStation all the way.
Yeah, same here, man. Don't fire me. I mean, was you there in the 90s? Like, I've still got my PlayStation 1 from 1994, right? Like, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like,
I don't know where mine is. Like, I had a PlayStation 1, I had a PS2, I had a PS3, which I know where my PS3 is. It's actually at my mom's place right now.
That's sweet. Love that.
My PS4 is in the basement that's sitting somewhere that I don't use because I've got a PS5 that's able to do everything I need it to. And I've even got a PSP.
I've got one. My son this morning asked if he could take it to school. Because he was like, I'm bored, right? I'm like, you're not taking it to school. He's like, why? It's an antique now, right? Like, that's mine. He found it, right, in my collection. He was blown away. He was like, I can play PlayStation games in my hand, right? So he's an Xbox fan. Different generation. That's all
Different
I'm
generation.
Say. Different generation, right? But yeah, I like to ask people those questions because I feel like you can,
figure them out, right?
Figure them out, right? It's probably why we get on so well, right? But that's great. Well, it's great having you on the show. I really appreciate your insights. Like I said, I've learned a lot, right? Just by meeting you, right? And the interactions and the collaboration. If folks want to find you, where's the best place?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm also available on Blue Sky. I'm trying to move away from X, Twitter, only because it no longer is the platform that I remember it to be. And I'd rather start continuing these connections and networking in places like LinkedIn and Blue Sky. So find me there and follow me and send me a DM. Let's chat.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks again for coming on the show, and thanks for all our listeners, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Cheers,
awesome.
Everyone.
All right. Bye.
You've been listening to the Code to Cloud podcast, where ideas meet innovation and the future of tech takes flight. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your network. Let's keep building the tech community together. For more insights, resources, and updates, follow us on social media or visit us at codetocloud.io. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and remember, every line of code has the potential to shape the future. See you in the cloud.